got a lot of people signed up to testify today, and I know there's a lot of folks here that would like to testify. So we are going to try to limit the time. I think we'd probably try and go 20 minutes for those that would like to testify for the bill, and 20 minutes for those that would like to testify against the bill. And then try to get as many, and we've got to have at least 30 minutes to work the bill, because we have some amendments already distributed. But with that, let's go ahead and take roll, and then we'll get started.
Madam Chairman, for Senate Education, February 12th, 2025, Senator Brennan.
Here.
Senator Olson.
Here.
Senator Rothfuss.
Excuse, he's presenting a bill.
Senator Scott.
Here.
Chairwoman Schuler.
Here,
You have a quorum.
okay. Anyway, we're excited to have the chairman from the House side, Representative Andrew. And so with that, let's just take off, see what we got here.
All right, thank you, Madam Chairman. House Bill 199 is an update to our existing ESA program. This has been one thing that I think has been a little bit confusing, because it is basically a giant amendment to what we already have in law. So you really have to read the law and the bill together for this to make sense. So essentially, what we're changing with this bill to our current statutes is a few things. The first and the most important thing is that it makes this program universal to everyone. We remove the 150% of federal poverty level cap on income for eligibility. This was problematic because it leaves very few Wyoming families eligible for this program, and also creates a violent eligibility cliff where you could make an extra dollar unexpectedly and lose your eligibility for this program. It also increases the scholarship amount from $6,000 to $7,000, and it removes the eligibility for pre-K. A note on that is that while that is in our current statute, by the time that this bill would potentially be enacted into law, no one will have received that scholarship yet. The other thing it does is it changes the funding source. It creates a stable funding source using federal mineral royalties. And additionally, as it stands, it removes the requirement for a nationally normed exam, and instead places in the parent agreement that they are required to assess their student on academic progress. The next thing it does is change the name of the program to Wyoming Freedom Scholarship. It didn't really have a name, but feel free to have fun with that one. I think maybe there's some ideas on where to go with that, and that really, honestly, that adds to most of the length of the bill, because we had to go in and amend so many things. So that's what it does. I think, it's really important to consider and read this bill in context, because that's where in the law is where the sideboards are and where the accountability is. This is a program for which every dollar is accounted for. Nobody receives a check. They get to direct their funds through our state's online portal, which we have already contracted with. And I think that's just a really important point to make, because that has been a criticism of this bill that I've heard a lot, is that people are just getting checks and doing who knows what with it, but that can't happen here. Thank you.
Any questions for Representative Andrew? Yes, Senator Scott.
Madam Chairman, and a question I really have for all of the presenters. On page 5, line 10, there's a $7,000 cost, which I understand is based on the tuitions we're actually seeing in private schools in Wyoming. The figures I have on what we're spending on education per pupil in K-12 in the public system is $20,149, which is what's in the booklet that the Taxpayers Association passed out. That's a tremendous difference. What, are there some things that are not covered in this bill, like special ed and transportation, that are causing some of that difference? What's the explanation for that larger difference? You know, I know we're very, very richly funded publicly, but still, that's a tremendous difference.
Representative Andrew?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. This amount is based off of really the most expensive option that people might come up with in the private marketplace. It's the average of what a full tuition to a private school would be. It's a little higher than that, the average, to be able to encompass most of those options. But that's what it is based on. There isn't a model here. There isn't necessarily funding directly for transportation. We're just trying to give people a boost in being able to have as many options as they possibly can.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, follow up.
Follow up, the intention is that people who get the scholarship and go to private school will not face an additional tuition. Am I correct in that, or will they?
Representative Andrew?
Madam Chairman, yes, that's correct.
Other questions? Yes, go ahead, Senator Olson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So if you can, help walk me through this funding source issue. In my mind, if you removed the funding source the furthest you possibly could from the school foundation account, and used general fund dollars, you would have the strongest argument against the constitutionality claim. The FMR, if I'm not mistaken, a portion of the tip goes to the school foundation account. So I think you're intercepting a portion of school foundation dollars. So help me, if you know, understand why that is the better route, or maybe not, maybe it's not. If you agree with me that maybe they should be general fund dollars, just help me elucidate on that.
Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So how this works is that you take 50% of the FMRs that are headed to the school foundation program, and you use them for this Freedom Scholarship account. If that account becomes overfunded, which is defined as it has more than 150% of the need for the next year's demand, then the rest of it actually tips back to the school foundation program. And the idea is there, referencing what Senator Scott was talking about, the cost difference, is that in the long run, this essentially helps stabilize the school foundation program because it causes less demand with the extra cost of them going to public schools. These same FMR dollars go to many different sources. One of them is highways. I don't have them all memorized. But one of the ideas of using those funds is that they are federal dollars. And I think that is the simplest, cleanest source of money we could use for this bill. I don't necessarily think we have a concern with general fund dollars either, but this is what was recommended to us by the lawyers who help us draft this in the most constitutional way. These same people have been involved with state Supreme Court cases, national Supreme Court cases on this legislation the whole way. So I trusted what they said, took this route, and I think they'll be here to testify, and they'd probably be much more qualified to answer your question.
Okay, other questions? Okay, just one I have, Representative, on page 8. I'm just wondering what the conversation was like on the other side, where you guys took out the requirement that the ESA students take a statewide assessment or a nationally normed achievement exam. What was the discussion over there on that?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So I've been in this education space for about 5 years now on the Education Committee, and I never hear the end of how the YTOP and these nationally normed exams are some of the is probably the least enjoyable and most frustrating part of the whole education system. From teachers, parents, students, no one seems to just love that we have to do this. And so the idea is, why are we going to take the most annoying part of our public education system and just stick it in this program where we're trying to do something entirely different?
All right, other questions? I think we'll probably have some more, but if you can stick around, that'd be great. If you need to go, I know there's people who are starting to present bills on the other
Nope, I'll
side
be
here and
here.
there,
Thank you.
so. But there's no other questions, we'll turn you loose, and thanks for your testimony, thanks for the information. So with that, I think we'll turn the time over to our agency, Department of Ed. So, welcome. How we doing this morning?
Great. Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Megan Degenfelder, State Superintendent of Public Instruction. With me is Dickie Shaner, Chief of Staff for the Department of Education, and Trent Carroll, COO for the Department of Education. Coming today to visit with you about House Bill 199. As you're all, I'm sure, very much aware, school choice has been a priority for me, very important for me in all aspects of education within our traditional public system and beyond. And I truly believe in ensuring that every single child in the state of Wyoming should be ensured to a good quality education. A couple of things that you'll recall from discussion of this bill last year. I've always been supportive of ESAs that are universal, have always supported them at an amount that actually impacts school choice, and have always supported accountability with our education savings accounts. And so I do want to mention just a couple of things to create some clarity around the program. I know that a lot of misinformation has been circulating. First of all, accountability is important when it comes to receiving public funds. This includes certification of providers, which currently exists and was added back into the bill on the House side, and I believe that may be further amended by this chamber as well. That means that parents do not just get a check in the mail, or that they do not need to prove that they have a student. Parents must show proof of student status and residency with government identification documents. Parents further must use a marketplace platform that works somewhat like an Amazon site of approved providers through the Department of Education that money will then directly flow to. This is being currently promulgated through rule, which of course will then have the same effect as law. I support this level of accountability and would also support reinstitution of a required assessment in the bill as part of accountability. The good bringer is correct. We are working as we speak on ways that we reduce the assessment burden on our public schools. So we'll continue to do that moving forward as well. Secondly, funding for the ESA program does not mean defunding our public schools. I think it's important to put into perspective the dollar amount for our ESAs in this bill and then the dollar amount for students in the public system. The bill provides $7,000 per student. Per LSO, the average amount of school foundation program dollars per student in Wyoming for public schools in 24-25 is $18,763. Parents would thus receive 37% of the average per pupil amount. Now, this student's ADM would be lost by a district if they moved from the district into this ESA program, but important also to recognize that the district would no longer be providing education for that student. Further, I know there's been a lot of discussion of funding for-profit institutions in this way. Would just encourage folks that have that concern to also look at our budgets, both at the state level, but also at district level, and the sheer amount of dollars that is being spent as we speak for-profit institutions, whether it be curriculum, textbook, professional development. Second, I would note that if this bill passes, I would remind everyone that the state still has a constitutional obligation to fund K-12 education according to the model that has been created during recalibration. The bill does not change the model. And the funding model, as you're all aware, is designed to automatically adjust resources to align with changes in district enrollment. That will not change. The model would continue to provide necessary funding to districts regardless of their size. And in addition, there are things like the small school adjustments, the small district adjustments built into the model that further ensure that our districts receive funding they need to educate the number of students served. Would close with I love our Wyoming public schools. I'm a proud product of them. That support and supportive school choice are not mutually exclusive. We can have an incredible public system and support education for all. With a couple amendments to this bill, I think that we can truly get there. And so with that, Madam Chairman, would stand for any questions.
Questions for the superintendent? I have a couple for you, if no one else has anything. When you talk about the certification process for the education service providers, what would that look like on page 11?
Madam Chairman, I'll pass it to Dickie Shaner. He's been integral in work on the rules on
Sure.
this.
Yeah, thank you. Excuse me, Madam Chairman. The certification process right now, when we're looking at the two parts to the existing program, we have the pre-K and then the K-12. Really, the only language around the certification requirement in the pre-K, other than providing your standard information about who you are, where you live, et cetera, is some sort of kindergarten readiness that exists at that pre-K facility. And so we've worked with pre-K providers around the state to come up with a process for how we would basically ask for assurances from those pre-K providers that they have, a legitimate curriculum and doing other things to ensure kindergarten readiness. And then we have a staff person, a program manager, who will do follow-up virtual meetings with those certified preschools, just to look at certain, items, look at their curriculum, et cetera. And then a very similar process for the K-12, and what we have are education service providers. And really, under that ESP umbrella, there are kind of two categories. There are the qualified schools, which are the private schools, and then there's kind of everybody else, the tutors, et cetera. They all have to submit an application, again, agreeing to follow the rules, the laws, et cetera. For the qualified schools, there is an extra requirement that these certain subjects be taught, English, math, et cetera. And so we're going to kind of do the same thing with those qualified schools that I just explained with the preschools. Give us a list of assurances that show that you have these subjects that are going to be taught, and show us the assessment that you're going to use, and then we will have that virtual follow-up with our program manager just to kind of check in with them. And so that's how it would work for both pieces of the current program.
Any other questions? I've got just one more, then, and either one of you. Page 12, when we start talking about investigating reports of misuse of the funds. I know that's a concern a lot of people have out there in Wyoming land, and this is going to put a lot of burden on you folks, but how exactly would you be able to account? I mean, I know there's certain things in statute that they can use to buy with those funds. How are you guys going to do that, basically? Keeping in accounting and oversight and accountability.
Good morning, Madam Chairman. Trent Carroll, WDE. Great question. As the superintendent mentioned, we're largely focused right now on the development of the online marketplace. And we believe, working in partnership with the vendor that we selected through the RFP process, that we can really leverage the technology to provide some safeguards around the expenditure of those funds. So by directing the majority of the expenditures through the marketplace, we can ensure that those funds are only going to approved providers that have been vetted by the department. We can ensure that the money is only being used for those expenses that are specified in statute in our program rules. So there's a lot of controls that we can leverage through the software itself. So that's our main focus right now. We're currently working with our vendor to develop that. Obviously we've had to pump the brakes just a little bit while we await the outcome of this bill, because this could change the program pretty significantly from where it stands today. But we will make sure that we have all of those things in place by July 1st and the beginning of the next school year.
Okay. And just as a follow-up, is this going to require more staff at Department of Ed?
Madam Chairman, we currently have two ESA program managers that were hired based on last year's bill. Great expertise, one of which just came from being a district superintendent within the state, and so a lot of knowledge about education and these programs. Speaking of, we don't know how large this will grow, right? And so that's where it was really important to us to have a good vendor on board. That's going to be really important. We want to keep as much within this marketplace as possible. Mr. Carroll.
Madam Chair, I would also just add that there may be some expenditures that need to process outside of the marketplace. We will handle those on a case-by-case basis. We are creating a reimbursement process that is a requirement in the current law that exists. So those expenses would be pre-approved before we would send any money to a family. But there could be a need for specialized equipment, for example, maybe special education students, something of that nature. But even in those cases, we will first try to add the item to the marketplace and direct those funds back through the marketplace. And as the last resort, we would look at the reimbursement process.
And just to follow up on that, I looked back through statute just to see what kinds of things would be required, or at least acceptable expenditures. And so my understanding is when the money comes to you and the parent returns whatever their receipts, I assume that's how it's going to be done. If they've got something in there for a spa day or I don't know. We hear stories about other states and things that are going on there. I just assume that would be stopped at your level.
Madam Chairman, that's correct. And I think, the law passed last year specifies uses for these. I also think, again, back to that concept of the marketplace, of that we're not going to be, that the spa day would not be included on our approved providers. And so it wouldn't even be an opportunity for a parent to select that within the enclosed marketplace.
Darn. I was, no, just kidding. Other questions from the committee? Okay, I don't think I have any more, so thanks so much for your testimony. With that, would you like to start with the pros or the cons today? I don't know. Do you want me to do rock, paper, scissors? Let's go with the cons first? Okay, let's go with the cons first. Those of you that are opposed to the bill. Now, we're just going to allow 2 minutes. I don't know, who wants to time this? Can you time it?
I can time it.
Okay, 2 minutes, so you're going to have to speak quick in order to try and get as many people in as we can, and so go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what you want us to know about this bill.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Tate Mullen, Government Relations Director for the Wyoming Education Association. I want to answer a couple of quick questions. Senator Scott had asked, what is the disparity between the funding, the $7,000 per pupil for this, and the $18,000 per pupil that we have within our public education system? There's a few components that are noteworthy. First of all, we need to frame this within the context of what we are constitutionally obligated to provide our students, and that is an adequate and equitable education. We have, because of our rural nature, we have economies of scale issues. So that increases the overall per pupil cost. Additionally, the addition of charter schools has been one of the largest contributors to the overall funding that then does get dispersed in terms of at least the calculation for the per pupil amount. Additionally, we've seen increased costs for special education because we know our students are, more of them are, have some behavioral issues, and some of those are more severe. The costs associated with those have increased. I do want to bring up a couple of other additional pieces. So there's a discussion about the funding mechanism and whether that's constitutional or not. The fact of the matter is that it doesn't matter if it's FMRs, it doesn't matter if it's general fund dollars. We are redirecting those. You are appropriators. You have the ability to fully fund a cost-based model of education, whether using whatever account you want to use. We haven't done that. So when we are taking on a new obligation, this just seems very counter to the fiscal conservative approach that I grew up with in Wyoming. We fulfill our first obligations before we take out a new one. And it seems like that's what we're doing, because we're failing to meet our original obligation, yet we're funding this. Additionally, the last thing that I want to add, there is a constitutional problem. The bill is unconstitutional, regardless, again, of that funding mechanism. The universal component is another significant one. But we've heard that this has been constituent driven, right? That this is something the people of Wyoming want. Fact of the matter is that we worked with a Republican polling firm, and I provided you with all those results, as well as additional data that demonstrates that 70%, close to 70% of Wyoming residents do not want a universal voucher program in the state.
Thank you.
With that, I'll rest.
Okay, any questions? All right, thanks so much. Go ahead and introduce yourself. 2 minutes goes fast, doesn't it?
Good morning. Thank you,
Mr.
Madam
Mullen just
Chairman.
found that out.
I am Dr. Melissa Whelan, the principal at St. Anthony Tri-Parish Catholic School in Casper. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today about the Wyoming Freedom Scholarship As a Catholic educator, I believe that it is the parents who are the primary educators of their children. And as the oldest of 5 children who attended 4 different high schools, I recognize that every type of school does not fit every child. I think the families in Wyoming should have the opportunity and the means to choose the best option for their children, whether that be homeschooling, public school, charter schools, private schools, or parochial schools. Last year, I testified in support of the Educational Savings Account, and I am grateful to the legislators who passed that bill. And while disappointed with Governor Gordon's red line veto of certain income levels, I am excited to see how the passing of this Educational Savings Account bill will begin to benefit the citizens of Wyoming. I'm here today with concerns regarding this new bill and any negative impact it could have on the existing good work that began last year. The deletion of the preschool program, the lack of a nationally norm reference test, and the universal application despite constitutional concerns does give me pause. While there may be some studies that show that preschool doesn't have lasting impacts, there are others that do show the benefit to early literacy by enrolling in preschool. And I understand that early childhood education is not a direct function of the state, but if we are concerned with literacy levels, early intervention could be key. Last year's bill asked that education services providers have students take a nationally norm reference test. This compromise between mandating the YTOP and allowing schools to choose the assessment that they would want is important. If we are providing government funds to individuals and schools, then there should be accountability. And as I stated last year, I am held accountable by our parents for the education provided to their students, and I have the opportunity to choose the test. I can agree with this provision because accountability is important. The red line veto by Governor Gordon last year was disappointing. I do believe that families at 250% of the federal poverty level are the working poor, and I would appreciate that income level being included to benefit more Wyoming families. My concern with this current bill is that based on conversations, whether this bill will pass a conditional test for the Constitution. Wyoming families deserve the opportunity to choose the best education possible for their children and should be provided with the means to do so. The funding for education should follow the child, and so should accountability. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I will stand for questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you for making the trip down.
You're welcome.
Hopefully the roads were good for you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, next. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Jana Kessner. I'm a parent in Laramie County, School District Number 2, and I'm up here today to ask you to kill House Bill 199. And here's why. Supporters of this bill have argued that it provides for more choice, but in reality, I would argue this bill is more of a disguised attempt to gut our school systems under the fad of parent choice and actually removes choice long-term. First, in our state constitution, using these funds for a religious private school would be unconstitutional, as public funds cannot, as we know, support religious institutions. Therefore, these voucher funds automatically exclude any religious school. So we already have less choice. Second, some have argued that this bill lets others enter private schools, assuming no religious affiliation. This is unrealistic because private schools do set their own price and often cost more than this voucher. The average private high school in Wyoming, according to educationdata.org and privateschoolreview.com, is $15,000. And so average families, mine included, could not afford a private school even with this voucher. Instead, my children, along with others, would be left behind in inadequate, understaffed, and poorly maintained schools because there will not be sufficient funds to maintain our current level of educational facilities and support. So as this bill removes funds for students not already in the system, and just because there will be lower demand, as I heard argued earlier today, that does not change the fixed cost of our buildings and our maintenance. That will stay the same. So again, we now have fewer choices, but poorer choices at that. Third, rural schools, which make up a significant part of our state, also really don't have a choice realistically when it comes to school choice. Parents don't have the resources or time to self-bus their children, in some cases 20, 30, 40, 80 miles to the next closest school. And with all the cuts aimed at education across this current session, this bill would in fact contribute to schools closing across the state. Small schools like Albin Elementary School here in Laramie County would likely not survive such a cut. And our choices would be even fewer in the long run, I believe. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions? Okay, thanks so much. Keep coming.
Madam Chair.
We'll just keep filling the chairs. I didn't catch your name.
My name is Benita Pearson, and I am a ranch wife and stay-at-home mom. I come from Gillette, Wyoming to speak on House Bill 199 and to express my concern about how it does not actually expand school choice. Our most southern pasture borders a little school called 4J Elementary down Highway 50. And I assure you, I cannot cross the highway and have the option of a private school. That being said, I could also homeschool my child, but it's not a choice I've made. Even with those options, I would still choose 4J. I'm sure each of you can think of a small community or town in Wyoming that if their public school was to shrivel up and die, so would the town. That's just how Wyoming is. We're small, and we're a small town with a long road. So Arizona is a great example to look to see maybe why we should take some pause. Testimony was given on the House side that 199 would in not so distant future save Wyoming money, and that simply is not true. It's the figures really, you can't compare it. It's not apples to apples. So the people who would take advantage of these savings accounts or scholarships are people who are already and have their children enrolled in things like private school and then also homeschool. And so the kids who are attending public school really probably are going to, as the previous speaker had mentioned, continue to attend the public school. I guess that's all I really wanted to testify about, is that, you know, we can look to examples of examples why Wyoming hasn't opted in, like the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency. They said this is how we should, you know, handle juveniles, and it just didn't work for Wyoming. And Wyoming at that time stood up and said, you know, while that all sounds well and good, it just won't work for our state. I think this is another example. We have a great bill that was passed just last year. I would encourage the body to take pause and let's let a year pass and see what actually happens with the current bill or current law that's been enacted. Thank you.
Questions? Okay, thank you. I just saw Senator Jones pop in. Senator Jones, did you want to jump up and testify today? Okay, well, welcome. Go ahead. Keep coming.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Brian Farmer, Wyoming School Boards Association. Madam Chair, I'd like to specifically address the fiscal consequences and fiscal impact of this legislation. So, Madam Chair, if you draw your attention to the fiscal note says that in this fiscal year 25, it's going to cost $11 million. There's not even 6 months left of fiscal year 25, and it's anticipated to cost $11 million. And then as we move into the next fiscal year and each year thereafter, it's $44.5 million. So this is a price tag to pay attention to. That money comes from the federal mineral royalties, as Senator Olson pointed out, through the diversion. Now, federal mineral royalties are a payment in lieu of taxes. Those are revenue received by the state. It becomes the revenue of the state. And so then the state is making a decision of whether or not to expend its money or its credit for the benefit of individuals. We have to be very, very careful about Article 16, Section 6 of the Wyoming Constitution that says that the state of Wyoming shall not give its money or its credit to individuals except for the necessary support of the poor. So we have to be very clear that in the simplest of constitutional tests that we're not violating that provision. Madam Chairman, when I talk about the fiscal consequence and the $45 million per year, I want to go back to a discussion that I heard on the floor of the Senate just on Monday, pointing out the drain to the School Foundation Program account. Now, the drain to the School Foundation Program account by the LSO's figures, just by actions of the 68th legislature, is at $450 million. $450 million drained to the School Foundation Program just by action of the 68th legislature. So we've created a structural deficit. You can look at your fiscal profile today and see in your fiscal profile today that it's going to require draw on the Legislative Stabilization Reserve account, over $100 million draw from LSRA. So you've created, by your choices, a structural deficit. You continue to have the obligation to fund education, and now the choice is this a necessary program? You already have a voucher program in place, and it's a program that has been stood up and still has opportunity to take place. But Madam Chair, I think that the 68th has to think about, is this prudent action moving forward? Is this fiscally responsible moving forward as a good steward of state resources? And as we look at that, I think we have to be very, very critical of, is this a program that presents accountability? You've already heard concerns about the assessment that exists. Is it a program that presents transparency to the degree that this limits the certification of vendors from the previous program? That's concerning. Madam Chair, the public ought to know what the state is spending its money on. There has to be a clarity on that. And Madam Chair,
Time's up, Mr. Farmer.
Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Farmer? Okay, thank you so much for your testimony. Continue. Welcome, please introduce yourself.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair. Fellow Senators. My name is Mike Hamill. I'm superintendent with Carbon Number 1 in Rollins. And it may not fit with meeting protocol norms, but I'd just like to see, by a quick show of hands, how many people attended public schools when you were growing up? Okay, and I'd ask the people to consider, how'd that work out for you? Sincerely, how did your time in public education serve your careers and your life going forward? I further ask the committee, what's the role of an all-inclusive, high-quality education system in a free and great society? The United States, in my opinion, is the greatest country ever created, and a huge part of our country is due to our commitment to education of everyone. Our founding fathers understood this connection. Thomas Jefferson said, educate and inform the whole mass of people, for they're the only sure reliance for the preservation of our liberty. Others of our founding fathers had similar quotes. I want to read a quote to you that I gave to the Rollins Daily Times in late August of 2017. I'd been superintendent in Carbon 3 for 3 months, or Carbon 1 for 3 months, and on a completely unrelated topic was being inducted into the University of Wyoming Athletics Hall of Fame. Here's the quote. I was just a Wyoming public education kid. I had parents that expected me to work hard, and I had talented teachers and coaches along the way. There were great things out there that are available for people across the state of Wyoming who are willing to roll up their sleeves, work hard, dream big, and go out and make those things happen. Before I go further, let's take a look at Wyoming public education system as produced over the immediate past. The National Assessment of Educational Progress is largely recognized as a national report card and measures 4th and 8th grade reading and math every other year. The website also rank orders the states in each of these categories. It's therefore very easy to add up the ordinal rankings in all 4 areas, make a determination about which states had the best overall performance. In 2015, we were 5th in the nation. 2017, we were 4th in the nation. 2019, we were 5th in the nation. 2022, we were 4th. 2024, we were 5th. In 2022, our 4th graders in math were top in the nation. Those same students were 2nd in reading. In 2024, our students were 2nd in reading in 4th grade. And the most recent ACT, compared to states that require all 11th graders to take the assessment, we were top in the nation. In short, our Wyoming public education system is working quite well. I'd certainly not suggest that it's perfect, and I fully acknowledge we need to keep our foot on the pedal and try to continue to improve outcomes for students. In the same breath, however, I'm exceptionally proud of our educators around the state. I'm exceptionally proud of our support staff, our building administrators, central office administrators, our elected board of trustees. They should all take pride in the results that they've helped produce. I'd also sincerely hope this body takes pride in that. Your investment has paid dividends. We were never in the top 5 in the country before the investments from this legislative body. As it pertains to House Bill 199, I'd have to wonder, why is the legislature considering paying upwards of $44 million annually to create a parallel publicly funded educational option for families when the one in place is producing the results I just shared with you? Let me repeat that respectfully.
You want to wrap that up, Mr. Hamel?
This legislative body pay $44 million to create, did you say my time was up?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Well, thank you so
very
much for your testimony. Questions for Mr. Hamel? Thank you for making the trip down. Appreciate it. Who's next? I think we're just going to intermix pro and con because it looks like we're doing that anyway, so just keep it coming.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Katie Wheeler, and I'm an 8th grade English teacher here in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And I would like to clarify that I'm not speaking on behalf of my employer or any program I'm a part of. However, I am speaking to represent my colleagues and my students. I'm here because I question the amount of state money that House Bill 199 puts at risk. I started teaching 20 years ago and moved to Wyoming right after several significant pay increases, although I didn't know this at the time. When I received my first contract, I called the head shed and said, "I think you sent me the wrong contract." To which the secretary replied, "Oh, honey, you're going to love it here." And I have. But I worry that my experiences are vastly different from new teachers. And I worry that those entering the profession do not have the same experience with higher costs of living and living with less money available. Two stories illustrate this better than I can argue. One is from last night. I talked with one of my colleagues, a teacher in her first 10 years of teaching, who's considering leaving the profession. While I never want to pressure people to stay in teaching, this one hit hard. She's bubbly, she's smart, and students love her. And the pay simply does not match her workload. Two is from my own classroom. The heater went out this winter. And because our school is slated for a remodel in the next few years, my heater will not be repaired. So I have a space heater, which cannot be run at the same time as the microwave or the copier down the hall because of breaker blows. I've grown fairly hardy living in Wyoming, but today my students and student teacher are in that classroom. And I know the lines, "You're gonna love it here," might hit different to them. For these reasons, I'm hesitant to let more money for Wyoming public education be diverted from the institutions we've worked so hard to build. These schools, our teachers, and our students here deserve to feel as safe, celebrated, and comfortable as I did when I entered the profession 20 years ago. Thank you for your time and ongoing work for our state. I stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Wheeler? Thank you for serving our state. Appreciate it. Who's next? I think I might
Madam
recognize
Chair,
this person
Committee,
here.
my name is Joanne True, and I'm from Casper. I have children who currently attend parochial school, and two more who attended parochial school, graduated 8th grade, and are now attending public high school in Natrona County. As a parent, I find that private school options are part of the school system as a whole, that private and public schools work well together, and we've certainly seen that as parents. I don't want to see private schools being seen as the enemy of the good public schools that we all have here. And I'm afraid that this bill might do that. I'm a firm believer in school choice, but I'm opposed to this bill as written and prefer to return to the ESA bill that was passed last session. There is a provision in the Wyoming Constitution that direct funding is only allowable when beneficiating the poor, and others have spoken at length about that, so I won't go on. But under the universal stipulation that currently exists, this would remove income restrictions. And just an example, I would have funding available to be sending my kids to a school I already pay to attend. I just want to, note that. Also, preschool education, I think, needs to remain in place. Finally, folks already talked about standardized testing, so I don't need to go into that, but public funds should come with accountability. So just making sure that standardized testing stays in. We have an educational savings program already in place, and I would advocate keeping it as is. Thank you, and I would stand for any questions.
Questions for Ms. True? Okay, thank you so much for making the trip. Appreciate it. Okay, who's next?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Madam Chair, my name is Barb Cook. I'm a retired educator of 21 years and a current school board trustee for Laramie County School District 1. However, today, I'm speaking about my own personal feelings. I encourage you to vote no on House Bill 199. At this very minute, throughout the schools in Cheyenne, we have highly educated, accredited teachers following vetted curriculum, knowing that their students will need to complete standardized assessments several times throughout the school year, holding both educators and students to account for their work. I believe Cheyenne residents feel their taxpayer dollars are being used in a responsible manner, supporting this type of education. Compare that to this possibility: a parent using a school voucher to pay for a private church-affiliated school, not using vetted curriculum, not requiring any type of state assessment, and possibly sending students out into our community with an incomplete educational experience. House Bill 199 could decimate our public education, as has happened in other states. In Arizona, their voucher experiment has caused a budget meltdown. This year, it faces a $1.4 billion shortfall. Much of this is a result of their new voucher spending. The price tag for universal vouchers in Arizona went from the original official estimate of just under $65 million to $332 million, and it is estimated next year's expense could skyrocket to $429 million. Public education has been one of the bedrocks of our country and most communities. Strong public education helps cultivate engaged citizens who contribute positively to society. House Bill 199, as others have stated, is likely unconstitutional. And lastly, House Bill 199 will funnel money to a few while ignoring the majority of Wyoming students in public schools. Please defeat House Bill 199.
Well, perfect timing. Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Cook? Okay. This young lady right here looks like she's familiar. Former legislator, right?
That's correct,
Yeah.
Madam
Yeah,
Chairwoman.
Please introduce yourself. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. My name is Jeanette Ward, Casper resident, and I am representing myself with these comments. Before I begin, I would like to share that I have two daughters who were educated via public education their entire school career and re-educated at the dinner table. They were taught to stand up for their beliefs in a hostile environment. Having said that, there is nothing that the education cartel would like more than for the people's tax dollars for education to go only to them. It is fundamentally unfair that the people's education dollars go to a contingent that only present one point of view, one way of educating, one way of thinking. It's time for the education monopoly to face competition, competition that will increase the quality of education for all students at a fraction of the cost per student currently being spent in the public system. To those who object to public monies going to, air quotes, religious schools, I present to you that public dollars already are going to religious schools. Make no mistake, public schools are preaching a religion, and that is secular humanism or worse. I urge you to pass this bill.
Questions for Ms. Ward? Okay, thank you for your testimony. Who's next? Just keep filling in the things. I'm just gonna roll them all 20 minutes, the pros and cons together, so you can either come in and jump on or against, doesn't matter. Welcome.
Madam Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County. By the way, I've been to the 4J school. It is so far out that the state provides housing for the faculty. Across my 19 moves and 30 years of active duty, my wife and I placed our 3 sons in both public and private schools. It depended on her assessment of the system we faced at the time. Where necessary, we bit the bullet on money. The other day, I spoke on some things that I'm going to touch on again when you heard Senate File 173, but some of these points are germane, although I won't dwell. Why are parents voting with their feet? We heard some words like, we want parents to communicate. And I observed that when parents communicate, where they stand makes a difference. And then I went on to talk about the experience I had on the island of Guam with the public school system there as commanding officer of the USS Holland. And I wrote a letter when we departed that ultimately ended up with the Department of Defense pulling military family children out of the Guam public school system and setting up a DoD system. My wife came into the school system in Wyoming as an instructional facilitator for reading. In her time in the system, she brought the ACT scores up 8% in her district and then was treated very poorly. I would never have agreed to her teaching in the state of Wyoming if I had understood the system she would face. Last summer, I ran for public office. I had an interview with the Wyoming Education Association. One of their lines of questioning had to do with school libraries and sexual stuff. They didn't like my answer. This kind of stuff is part of a systemic culture that is causing people to pull their children out of the public school system. So the question you face now is, when parents are making that choice, should you help them with money? I believe the answer is yes, and therefore I support the bill.
Time's up, Mr. Winnie.
I believe you must stand back and see the forest. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Winnie? Okay, thank you for your testimony. Keep coming. That 2 minutes goes fast, doesn't it?
It does.
Welcome, who's next?
Hello, my name is Travis Pearson, and I live in Senate District 8 here in Cheyenne. And I'm here today to ask you to vote no on House Bill 199. And I'm going to keep my comments here pretty brief. But as I've been hearing a lot of people speak today, we're kind of talking about education like these public schools are, buildings where students go to get educated. And if you take the time to travel the state and go to every corner, right, you'll notice that our public schools are so much more than that, right? These are like the heartbeats of our rural community. If you talk to people about, where they grew up and where they went to school, you're going to hear about, the big rivalry game on a Friday night, right? You're going to hear about an FFA beef sale, speech and debate tournament, right? Maybe it's like, my wife's an art teacher, so I'm a little bit biased, but like the all-district art show here in Cheyenne, right? These are places where when you go, right, these are like mini family reunions, right, where neighbors meet up with neighbors. And it's worth noting these public schools, right, they open anyone with open arms, whether someone shows up who perhaps has a disability, or someone who's homeschooled, who wants to play a sport or like take some electives, or someone maybe who just doesn't have a stable home life, right? That's what public schools exist for. They exist to serve the families and the students within their communities. So to sort of summarize, I'm asking you to vote no to this bill. I think that it's important to remember that generations of Wyoming people have gotten high quality educations at public schools and continue to do so. And I don't begrudge anyone who wants to homeschool their child or send them to a public or private institution. But in my opinion, it should not come at the cost of our public education system here in Wyoming. So I ask you to keep those schools in mind. Thank you.
Travis, I didn't get your last name. Okay, thank you so much for testifying.
Travis Pearson.
Pearson, okay. Any questions for Mr. Pearson? Okay, thank you. Next.
Thank you, Ms. Chairwoman, members of the committee. My name is Patricia McCoy. I'm Chapter Chair of Moms for Liberty of Laramie County. And I am here to speak today in strong support of House Bill 199. The math here is straightforward and fiscally responsible. The program provides up to $7,000 per student through carefully managed education savings accounts, less than half of what we currently spend per pupil. These funds can only be used for qualifying educational expenses with regular oversight and accountability. This represents not just choice, but smart financial stewardship that benefits both families and taxpayers. The money follows the child, ensuring both freedom of choice and responsible use of public funds. This bill further maintains complete freedom of choice. No family is forced to change schools, and public schools continue functioning as normal. This is simply about adding options, not removing them. Parents can choose what works best for their children, whether that's the public school, private school, or other educational opportunities. Some argue this will harm rural schools, but let's talk about what really harms rural education. Forcing families to stay in a system that isn't meeting their child's needs. We have students spending significant time, often over an hour each way, on buses to reach their assigned public schools. That's valuable time that they could be spending learning, resting, or participating in activities. In areas like Sublette County or parts of Sweetwater County, the distances between communities and schools create real challenges for families. The status quo isn't protecting rural education, it's constraining it. The true support for rural education means giving these families the freedom and resources to access the education that best serves their children's needs. Others raise concerns about accountability and potential misuse of funds. However, accountability is incorporated over more than 12 pages of the bill, including comprehensive financial oversight, investigation of misuse, clear legal remedies, and protection for students. The superintendent maintains authority to investigate and prevent misuse while ensuring continued access for eligible students and families who follow the rules. This bill recognizes a fundamental truth. Parents don't need permission to make educational choices for their children, and we do not co-parent with the government. When we hear strong
Time's
opposition...
up, Ms. McCoy.
Okay, thank you,
Any
Chair.
questions for Ms. McCoy? Okay, thank you for your testimony. Who's next?
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Go ahead.
My name is Faith Kingston. I am a proud citizen of our beloved state of Wyoming. I'm also a home educator. I want to address two specific concerns of the amendments. I have been home educating for many years now. I also have 2 students who are currently enrolled in the public high school in Cody, Wyoming. So I have experience with both home education, private education, and public education. And I think all of our goals as educators is that our students would have a well-rounded education that would serve them to be successful in their future roles. But I think we can also all agree that public education isn't for every student, that having strong alternate sources of education is only going to benefit our students in their futures. So I believe that with this amendment, as I said, I'm a home educator. I bear the burden, I pay all my taxes faithfully, but also I bear the burden of the financial aspect of educating my children. So I too understand what a broken copy machine can feel like. But I believe that because we have made this choice as a family, that these sacrifices are worth it. However, I believe that this money that's being made available to us is very valuable because I do pay my taxes. I do support the public school system. I also would like to receive support in that I am able to provide the best education for my children possible. As it is, I live in a one-income family because we've chosen to home educate. And due to that, I would not qualify. As it stands, I would not qualify for this if I were to apply for this. So that's why I really believe that this amendment is important. Also, I think we can all agree that a state test is not the only way to test mastery of a subject. And as a parent, I know that the greatest goal is if my child would understand the topic and be able to relate that verbally back to me. That's another way of testing mastery for a subject, that state exams are not the only way to know that our children understand what we're teaching them, that they have taken in everything that we have to offer and are able to express themselves on these different subjects. So I would ask that you would vote for these amendments. I believe that it would create a greater strength to all the strands of our education available to our students. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Questions? Okay, thank you. Who's next?
I'll take it there. I'm Brad McGinnis. Madam Chair, thank you for his time in the committee. Thanks for staying here all this session. It's probably getting long by now. Well, I'm 41 years old, born in Kemmer, raised in Evanston, live just South Cheyenne now. So I'm Wyoming dirt in my blood. We homeschool our kids, so I do support the school choice. I do think it's a great thing for parents to choose with their kids an educational path there. The only concerns with this bill I just have is the availability of facilities in Wyoming are limited to most of the communities. Where I grew up, our nearest private school would have been Park City, Utah, 40 minutes away. So we didn't have the ability to just go and have this school choice. This is the case in much of Wyoming, which would, this bill, the 7,000, it neglects half of the population here. It is a bit unfair for that. The other part is the funding. The 7,000 going straight to, we're a one income and way above the national average salary income. It's unethical for me to take the full 7,000 and take away from somebody else that could use that to support. So I don't think it's fair. It kind of creates an income disparity, I think, among our state to just give $7,000 to everybody. I believe a prorated amount based on your income level would be more appropriate and would seem more fair for the people in the small communities that don't qualify for the poverty, but are surely not in a position to pay for private school themselves. And that's all I got.
Okay. Questions for Mr. McGinnis? Welcome. I mean, I'm so glad that you're here, even though you left my hometown. It's one of my former students here. So, but you're the first one that's mentioned a prorated. That's an interesting topic. So anyway, thank you for that. Anybody else? Questions? Okay. Thanks so much. Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee for this opportunity to speak today and address this important topic. My name is Aaron Gillum, Policy and Advocacy Director at EdChoice. For those who may be less familiar, EdChoice was founded in 1996 by the free market economist Milton Friedman and his wife Rose, as they believed competition and new ideas in the education space was vital to improving the outcomes of students in every type of community across the country. They also believed that parental choice was core to the principles of freedom. This important piece of legislation has the potential to change the lives of many in the state of Wyoming. And Wyoming is not alone. Presently, 33 states, plus the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico, have enacted some kind of school choice program. Many states with multiple programs operating side by side. Last year, we hit a milestone as a nation, with the number of students utilizing private choice programs surpassing 1 million. Furthermore, with Tennessee's legislature passing a universal ESA program during their January special session just this past month, there will now be 14 states with universal choice programs on the books. So again, Wyoming is not alone. Wyoming's neighbors, in fact, Idaho and Montana, are also moving bills through their respective legislatures at this time. At EdChoice, we believe that allowing all families to choose the education that best matches their values and their needs is an important component that has been lacking when assigned schooling by address has been the model for many decades. And the empirical gold standard studies on the outcomes of school choice programs show the trajectory is clear. In fact, there have been a total of 188 total individual studies to date on choice programs, examining everything from educational attainment to civic values to parent satisfaction, and of course, the financial effects on the state. The overwhelming number, 84% of these studies, show positive outcomes, with another 10% indicating neutral results. And just to address one of the most persistent concerns, the fiscal effects of programs like the Wyoming Freedom Scholarship, just last year, the Arizona Department of Education itself issued an official statement indicating that they were running at a $28 million surplus. And just a few weeks ago, the state itself came out with an estimate for this year that the entire budget would be over $500 million in surplus. If I could just say, these programs, these school choice programs, are not causing a budget crisis, or there is not a budget crisis because of these school choice programs.
Time's up. Thank you so much. Appreciate your testimony. Questions? Okay. We've got about 10 more minutes for folks in the room, and then I'd like to get some, we've got 24 people online. I don't know that we'll get to everybody today, but anyway, if we've got maybe 10 minutes to, so maybe 5 more people-ish in the room, 6 maybe, if we hurry. Go ahead, please introduce yourself.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Committee, my name is Exie Brown. I'm a resident here in Cheyenne. I am in full support of this bill. Parents have the right to choose how and where their kids are educated. As we know, not all children learn in the same environment and in the same one-size-fits-all government school system. School choice has proven to work, especially like in states of Florida and Arkansas, where a study came out in 2023 that showed math and reading scores all increased while disciplinary issues such as absenteeism and suspensions have all decreased. So it is a system that works. Also, one thing I'm a firm believer in, and I've always stated this, is that competition breeds excellence. It doesn't matter whether it's in sports, whether it's in business, or whether it's in schools. And these improvements that have come and the scores that have increased within these schools, not only increased in private or charter schools, they also increased in the public school system. There's been a lot of misinformation and lies that are being spread by education associations, lobbyists, and bureaucrats that state that this is going to destroy our government school systems, and they're using that to scare and fearmonger our parents. Well, this is not the case because it actually enhances our school systems, and it's been proven over and over again. This program also is providing funds equally across the board. There's no winners and losers. All families will benefit, but especially our low and middle income families are going to benefit from this for those who cannot always afford. You always have those that are stuck in the middle that, yeah, they don't qualify for the lower program, but they don't have enough money to provide to go to other schools. The bottom line is we've been spending too much time investing into our institutions, and we have those who are using our children to shield between the parents and the institution to protect the institutional interests and not the children.
Time's up. Thank you.
So it is time that we invest in our students, not our institutions.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Questions? Okay. So let's just take the folks that are standing up, those that are sitting down, and we'll call it good in here if that's all right. Go ahead. Please introduce yourself.
Okay. Yes, I'm Amy Law. I live in Cody, Wyoming. My children have been in public school. I also home educate, and they did 1 year in private school. So I want to give you just a picture. I feel the public school, it's a bell curve. It hits the average students. And I notice, I also substitute in the public school, and I noticed that the low average kids get a paraeducator. Both my boys are in the gifted and talented program. So we pulled our child in 3rd grade because he was constantly losing recess. He was in the principal's office all the time. We pulled him because not only for him, but also for the sake of his classmates, because he was such a distraction. And so I was, I think I'm for this bill. I didn't know if I said that, because I believe school choice is so important. When I pulled our child, we were able to, with a co-op, teach my children what the founding fathers were educated in a classical system. We learned Latin, we learned logic. We actually did the Socratic method in science and in history and with literature. We asked questions of definition, comparison, just like Socrates did, circumstance, history, authority. So you ask, were my children prepared? Was I held accountable? Both of my boys then went into public school and high school. To give you an idea, they did the AP class of human geography, advanced placement. My first boy got a 4, and my second boy got a 5. So this worry of accountability that parents aren't going to teach their children, I was able to teach him in a much better way than the public school just was not able to. So I'm in favor of this bill. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Law? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Go ahead, introduce yourself.
My name is Joseph Martinez. I'm from Fremont County. Thank you for listening to all this great testimony. I appreciate your time and your efforts and energies in this bill. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I think that the last 2 speakers really took a lot of the words out of my mouth. There are a few things I want to expand on, especially from the previous speaker. She mentioned classical education and how our founding fathers were educated in that way. Our public school system is built off of a model created by John D. Rockefeller. That model was made to make workers, not made to create free thinkers. I am a product of public education, and I think it did a pretty good job, but that's also because I had the support of my family. There are other students who are not so lucky to have parents like mine who really embraced education. So supportive parents plus a public education is great. And there's a certain association in Wyoming that is demonizing a lot of these bills, and I think spreading rumors across the state, especially to educators, that I think are kind of unfounded. I don't think this is going to destroy public education. I love public education. I really do support it. But I think this expands options. There's a group in the Capitol that's been here this week and will be here today. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say the name of the group, but it's a group of homeschooled children who get together and learn about government. If any of you guys in the room have an opportunity to speak with these young children, they are intelligent, polite. They're not, I think, they're a great group of kids is what I'm trying to say. And I think if you meet them, you'll think the same thing. I have a little bit of a problem with the bill passed last year. I think it is kind of socialistic. I even think creating a wealth-based program would also be socialistic. This expands it to everyone in Wyoming, all parents, all students. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very, very much. Any questions for Mr. Martinez? Okay, thank you. All right.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Leslie Heiner. I am the director of the EdChoice Legal Policy and Education Center. I work with Aaron, that you heard from just a few minutes ago. I've been advocating for school choice for 39 years. That would be before there was any kind of a national movement for this. And during that time, I have participated in one way or another since 1980 in over 52 now cases that have been litigated against school choice. You might note that over half the country has embraced school choice, and it's, well, frankly, it's the hottest thing going these days. I've heard some testimony today about the constitutionality of school choice, Well, I am here as one of those litigators who has been involved in this litigation, and I can tell you that there are several litigators across the country that know this, that know the constitutional law, U.S. constitutional law, and Wyoming's constitutional law and your case law. And it's good. This bill is sound. It meets all the numbers. Your Constitution requires that there be parity in education. It does not require that that parity extend to the method in which a child is educated. And that's really what we're talking about now. This bill will best serve those children that for whatever reason, wherever they are, they're not thriving. And so then you find yourselves faced with a choice. Do you just let them go, these children who are not thriving, or do you provide an opportunity for them to be educated in a different way that suits them so that they can learn and become successful adults? And I might quickly add, if I may, the funding mechanism has also been vetted. You have a unique constitution here, and we've paid very close attention to make sure that this would be in line with your constitution, it would be sound, it would be legally defensible. And with respect to the religious aspect of this, the U.S. Supreme Court has been absolutely clear. If there is any provision in state statute or in state constitutions that works to take away a person's rights under the U.S. Constitution, those provisions cannot stand.
Thank you. Your time's up. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Questions from Ms. Heiner?
Madam Chairman.
Yes.
Ms. Heiner, can you expand upon the constitutionality of the funding source? I want to understand why using the FMR money, which would go to the school foundation account, a portion of it would, is more constitutionally defensible than just using general fund dollars.
Ms. Heiner?
There are a number, Madam Chair, there are a number of ways that that you can fund these programs. In this case, you do have some prior case law that lawyers who practice constitutional law are not fond of the language in some prior cases, the Campbell case in particular, which seemed to indicate that all money collected by the state goes to public schools. That's well, as an attorney, I can just say that that's suspect, and I would disagree. And so you have another provision, though, in your state constitution with respect to the mineral rights, which is something that is a usual and customary funding mechanism here. It's not found in other states necessarily, but the manner in which Wyoming has been using this funding lends itself to a constitutional way of funding this program. For those who are concerned that there would be money taken away from public schools, we've heard that argument for years, frankly, and it never holds up in court. It's simply not true. Your constitutional obligation remains, however you fund public schools, however you fund this program, nothing changes in terms of your obligation to fund education. But this method, again, was fully vetted by numerous attorneys who know this and know your state constitution backwards and forwards, as well as Representative Andrew, I might add, who first presented this idea. There's just nothing there that sticks out to say that this is unconstitutional in any way.
Okay, thank you. Any other follow-up questions? Okay, let's move on. We've got two more, and then we're going to have to decide as a committee here if we're going to take Zoom testimony or work the bill. True story. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Sarah Rest. I am a military wife and homeschool mother who has had the privilege of using the Arizona Universal ESA program for my children's education. For the second time in my husband's 18-year career, we PCSed to F.E. Warren last February, and we plan to call Wyoming our forever home. I'm here today because I believe Wyoming families, especially military families like mine, deserve the same opportunity we were afforded in Arizona. Because we are a military family and move around so frequently, we chose to homeschool our children from the beginning. While we were stationed at Luke Air Force Base, Arizona made ESAs available to all students. As a single income family at the time, it completely changed our educational experience. Until then, we had been wholly self-funded. With the ESA, we were able to tailor a more robust education that truly met our children's needs, one that included individualized instructions, adaptive learning tools, and extracurricular opportunities that would have otherwise been out of reach as a single income family of 5. I urge you to pass this bill and give Wyoming families the same flexibility that previously benefited my family and so many others in Arizona. When parents have the power to choose, children win. Thank you.
Questions? Okay. Oh, do you have a question?
Madam
Senator Olson?
Chairman, I do. I'm impressed by your testimony because you're the first and only person that has actually testified that actually has experience with receiving an ESA. So I appreciate your testimony. And my question to you is just why, explain why it was so important for you to have school choice and why is that so important for your family?
Well, as a single income family at the time, our funds were extremely limited. What we could do curricular-wise for our children was nowhere near what it was after being able to use the ESA. With the ESA, we were able to put our kids in extracurriculars and programs that otherwise we wouldn't have been able to afford. Such as for my son, we put him in computer programming and game design, which is what his passion is.
Just to follow up, what is the amount in Arizona similar to what this bill proposes?
The amount that we got, actually, I have that up. Hold on. We received $1,798.40 per quarter.
Okay.
That was for my daughter Rosalind. It actually was different for each student. Each student received an amount based on the grade level that they were in.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right. Appreciate your testimony. Next.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Madam Chairwoman, my name is Terry Bray, and I'm from Cody. I am a home educator, and I appreciate the time that y'all have allowed us to speak today. I do not want to disparage public education in any way. Again, like most of the others in here, we pay our taxes and we appreciate public education because a educated public as a whole is really important to our state. And I think that is one reason why school choice is so important, because as several have mentioned, a one-size-fits-all education is not for everyone. And so we're able to, with school choice, be able to look at other options. But in public education, we don't disparage who those children are. We go from the people with very little resources to those with the most. Public education is open. And so I'm a little bit confused sometimes as to why that's not the case with school choice. I'm not sure of the constitutionality. I was really pleased with listening to some of the other remarks and the fact that they want to keep public education fully funded, that we're not trying to take away that, because it is important to all of us, I believe, even when we make other choices. I did want to mention a couple of things about the testing options. And as far as in public education, we are looking to try to take a large group of students and find out where they are and monitor their progress. In a home educating environment, it's a little bit more difficult to look at those standardized tests because we're not teaching the same things. We are teaching civics and math and English and those same subjects, but in 4th grade, we might not teach Wyoming history where the school system does. And so requiring those standardized tests to be the same for educators that are outside the school system is not a good plan. Also, even in the public school system, students test differently. And so we need to find a way in the education system as a whole to be able to see what our children know and how they've learned. And I know that there is such little time, but I really appreciate that, and I encourage you to vote yes to this bill, to encourage a system where the public is educated across the board, not just in public education.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Bright? Okay, thanks so much. Okay, committee, we have a couple decisions to make. We have 24 people waiting to testify on Zoom. But if we don't have at least half an hour to work this bill, I'm not sure that I will let you guys make the decision, because I'm a team player. So we can either take more testimony from the Zoom folks and move the bill on to Friday, or we can close public testimony and work the bill. So
Madam Chairman?
I would like a vote from each one of you.
Yep, I would appreciate having the time to work the bill. I do not want to lay it back till the end of the week. I appreciate testimony, but we have received hundreds, if not thousands, of text messages, emails, phone calls, voicemails, plus the testimony that we've heard today. I think we're all hearing the public's input. We've been receiving that. And I think we can continue to receive that if this bill moves forward. Those who were online that maybe, or those in the room who didn't get the opportunity to testify, can submit their comments to us just in those manners that I referenced. But I would strongly prefer to work the bill and make sure we have enough time to do that the right way.
Okay. Senator Rothfuss?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, I'd suggest that we take the public testimony and then come back on Friday. This is an issue that's very important to an awful lot of people. Not everyone lives in Cheyenne or near Cheyenne, and we have a lot of folks that are from all over the state that feel just as strongly about this issue, but don't have the capacity, particularly in this weather, to be driving from the northwestern part of the state to Cheyenne and to have equal participation. I think it's important for us to hear from the constituents, and yes, we definitely have gotten plenty of email, text messages, and phone calls. No shortage, in case you were wondering, did we get them? Yeah, we did. We got them. They showed up. But nonetheless, I think we have the opportunity. We don't have that many bills coming to us for the second half of the session, and nothing holds us back from taking our time and listening to the public.
Okay. Senator Brennan, what's your choice?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to work the bill. We have had tons of public comments, as the two other senators have mentioned, and I feel like we can work the bill and that we can, as Senator Olson said, we can continue to receive that testimony. Everybody seems to have our phone numbers, which is good. We want you to contact us, and you can call, text, email us, and we can continue to hear that as the bill continues to get worked.
Okay, Senator Scott?
I agree with Senator Brennan and Senator Olson. I think we've received a very useful and representative sample of public testimony already.
Okay. All right, and I could go either way, so it sounds like it's three of you that would like that, one not. So we'll go ahead and close public testimony then. And what's your pleasure on this bill?
Madam Chairman, move the bill.
Okay, it's been moved by Senator Scott.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Before we go to amendments, I want to ask our resident legal expert one question.
Great.
Page 15, the B provision at the bottom of the page, where any legal proceeding challenging the application of the act, state bears the burden of proof to establish the law is necessary. That word necessary worries me, Madam Chairman. Lots of bills are useful, very good idea, but not absolutely necessary. And I wonder if we ought to change that.
Senator Olson?
Madam Chairman, Senator Scott, I'm not sure about that. What I can say is that I actually do have an amendment to this section. It doesn't deal with the word necessary, but I've worked with some folks who have walked this section particularly through the attorney's office, the Attorney General's office. And they have a recommendation, but that was not one of them. And I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I think if you wanted to remove it,
This is beyond my legal expertise.
All right, well, let's go ahead and,
I have,
yeah, let's start
Are
with
you
some
ready for
amendments.
amendments?
You bet, let's do that.
Madam Chairman, I have in front of you what's marked as amendment number 2 to House Bill 199. This amendment is for accountability. I strongly believe that we need to put strong accountability back into the bill. So what this amendment does is on page 8, it removes the stricken language, which you'll find on lines 20 through 22. So it reinserts the requirement that everyone receiving a scholarship has to either take the statewide assessment or a nationally normed achievement exam. And I think that the nationally normed achievement exam is really important language. I've heard the message from the homeschool community loud and clear that they don't use the white top and they don't want to use the white top, but this would allow them to use an ACT or an SAT type exam and still provide accountability. So that would be my first motion. Madam
Discussion,
Chairman.
discussion on that amendment? It's interesting, I had that one circled as well, and so that was.
Great minds think
Yeah,
alike, Madam
Great minds
Chairman.
think alike. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the second motion by Senator Olson, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? Okay, that is passed. Okay, one down.
Two senators, Senator Scott brought this language up on page 15 and 16. On page 16, starting on line 9, I would strike however and continue striking the language on the remainder of line 9 and all of lines 10, 11, and 12. This language would require a court or allow the court to have the opportunity to require all parents to file a joint brief. And the court, if the court really wanted to do that, could already do that. I think this raises a lot of legal complications to require the parents to do that. So this is language that the Attorney General's office found complicated and would like removed as well.
Is that the First Amendment or the third?
It's not a written amendment.
It's not a written one.
It's a
Okay.
verbal amendment, so.
Could you restate that?
Yep, page 16,
60.
16,
Okay. no wonder I
line
couldn't-
9, beginning with however.
Okay.
And then you just strike all of 9, 10, 11, and 12.
Okay. Any discussion on that amendment? And you say you visited with the AG's office?
I didn't personally, but somebody else did and brought this to me, yes.
All right, any discussion? Okay.
Madam Chairman, I've got the same lines
Do you?
marked as a problem.
Oh, okay, all right. All those in favor of that amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no? Okay, that amendment's passed. Other amendments?
I-
Keep going, you're on
I
a
do,
roll.
yes. Let's break it up into a fun one.
Okay,
What's marked as amendment number 1
okay,
in your stack? This is the most consequential amendment that we would make, Madam Chairman. I would move amendment number 1, which would change the name of the scholarship from the Wyoming Freedom Scholarship Act. Sorry, Representative Andrew. But it is a Senate file now. To the Steamboat Legacy Scholarship Act.
Steamboat Legacy.
It's a little more Wyoming, I think.
Senator Brennan, did you have a comment on that?
Well, I'm going to agree with Senator Olson that this is the most consequential and maybe the most important amendment that we could pass on this bill at this time.
I'm wondering where you guys came up with that just put your heads together
I
and
think-
said, it's gotta have a horse on it.
Yeah, I think we just, we wanted to find a way to put the buck and rider on this bill. And so Steamboat jumped out and that's how he came to that conclusion.
Okay. Other discussion on the bill?
And we
Or on
thought
the-
it would get
excuse me.
Senator Rothfuss to come along with us.
He's still not looking all that excited about it. If there's no discussion, let's go ahead and vote on it then. All those in favor of that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay.
Come on,
Senator
Charlie.
Scott's not in favor of it. Sorry, you didn't get him on
I
board.
think you just missed.
Okay. Next.
The only other, I don't, Senator Brennan, I don't know if you want to do the certification amendment,
Yeah, that's.
amendment
yeah, I
number
can-
4.
is that-
Will you-
Number 4?
Yeah.
I don't think I have 4. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay, Senator Brennan, go ahead.
All right, amendment number 4 goes into page 12 where we have the certification. Just really tightens up the language a little bit. Page 12, lines 1, I think we strike in. And then on line 2, kindergarten through 12th grade. And then on line 3, we strike including studies. And then line 4, we strike entirely. Line 5, the state of Wyoming. And then in lines 12, after science, insert throughout their kindergarten through grade 12 tenure. And so this just allows for saying, these are the things that need to be included throughout the grades, kindergarten through 12th.
Okay.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, discussion. Senator Scott?
Could I ask Senator Brennan to read it as it would read with the amendment passes?
Yes, let me tell you how that would read. Sorry, just a minute, let me, shut up. If you're, I was gonna say, if somebody's quicker than me, yeah.
Yeah, I've got it penned in, so.
Go ahead.
So it would begin on page 11, and it would say that the state superintendent shall establish a certification process for education service providers, which shall ensure ESA students attending qualified schools receive instruction in reading, writing, mathematics, civics, history, literature, and science.
Thank you.
Okay. So you just took out the Constitution, the US Constitution,
Correct, yeah.
Okay, basically.
Oh, but I
those
missed the last part of it. Actually, after science, it would say throughout their kindergarten through grade 12 tenure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that, being that those are included, the United States Constitution and the State of Wyoming Constitution are going to be included in your civics and history throughout that tenure.
Ashley, did you get that?
Yes, I did, Madam Chairman.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Yes, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So the reason in the original draft for the language, including studies of the United States Constitution and the Constitution of the State of Wyoming, is that requirement being elsewhere in statute for all schools in the state of Wyoming. That was previous legislation that was passed, that every student in schools in the state of Wyoming are obligated to do that. Is the implication here then that ESA students will not have to follow that law that's in place for all the rest of the students in the state?
Senator Brennan?
No, the discussion here is if you have somebody who's going to a school that's a little bit more, maybe you've got a little bit more tech or something, that we're not requiring the US Constitution and the State of Wyoming Constitution every single year, but that they're gonna get that throughout the tenure of their, I believe, is that?
And Madam Chairman,
Olson?
I would just correct, I guess, slightly the characterization of the state law. The state law only requires the US Constitution and Wyoming Constitution be taught in public schools. So currently, under the current law, homeschoolers and private schools are not required to teach the constitutions. And so they would actually be consistent with existing state law.
Any follow-up, Senator Rothfuss?
I think there's a fine delineation there about the fact that those institutions, the public schools, public institutions, or those receiving state funds are required to teach it. And the interesting nuance here is that all of these schools would then be receiving state funds. So I guess You can look at it either way as far as how it's structured, but it is the intent then that these schools be exempted from studying the Wyoming Constitution. Yeah,
As they are.
all right, thank you.
Okay. All right, any other discussion on that amendment? Okay, all those in favor of that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Those no? No. Okay, that's passed.
Madam Chairman.
Any others?
I had one more, but I'd like to get some thoughts from the committee, particularly Senator Scott's opinion on the funding. We've had brief conversations about it. We've had a little bit of testimony on it. I have, Senator Brennan and I have an amendment that would remove the second funding mechanism, the MFR tip, and replace it with a general fund amendment. And the idea of that was that it would be more constitutionally sound because you're not even indirectly touching the school foundation dollars, but we've heard different opinions today, so.
Senator Scott, do you have an opinion on that?
Madam Chairman, I don't know. I don't think you're going to be able to tell until you actually get a court case. Ultimately, the general fund backstops everything we do. The federal funds can be used anywhere. I have no idea whether it really makes a difference or not. I can see the funds that are by constitution dedicated to the public schools. Our constitutional provisions clearly apply there. But the advice we got in the interim committee when we had a session on that particular provision was that if we avoided those funds that are clearly dedicated, we had a good chance of prevailing. Now, that's not a unanimous opinion. The LSO staff, I think, was by and large on the other side of that. But I don't know that it makes any difference whether it's federal mineral royalties or general fund. I think you need one or the other or both of them. I really don't see a difference.
Senator Brennan, do you have a comment?
Yeah, as bills are moving, acting, live pieces of legislation, I think unless, Senator Olson, you feel differently, because of some of the different things we've heard over the last 24 hours, I'd kind of like to take and look at this a little bit closer and instead of doing this in committee, look at this and then decide something possibly for committee of the whole or not, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, all right.
And then we have,
Is that all
the only other amendment we have here in written form would be Senator Boner's amendment.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he is here. Oh, there he is, hiding in the corner.
Senator Bonner, you want to present that?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
sure, Madam Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity. Obviously, I just walked in, so forgive me if I say something that isn't necessarily relevant. The idea behind the amendment that I proposed deals with the potential funding stream. The idea being that the feedback I heard from the sponsor of the bill is that FMRs apparently are important for legal reasons. No justification as to why that is, but that was the argument. And so the amendment would basically still use FMRs, but instead of diverting it from school foundation program, it'd divert it from the general fund, the BRA. And so in particular, it'd be after the initial $200 million cap, you have that $8 million that goes to the University of Wyoming. And then after that, we would divert $25 million from the BRA to this new program. So that's what the amendment does. Not sure, frankly, if I would even vote for it at this point. I think personally it's a little premature to start permanently diverting revenue streams when we don't know the demand on the program, but certainly support the concept of general funds being used for this program. I think there's a clear benefit to society of school choice programs, including improving the competitiveness of our public schools. So that's a philosophy there. So like I said, take it or leave it. I throw it out there as an option. To be perfectly honest, I'm not sure if I would even vote for it if I was in your position, but I do think it's important to use general funds. So anyways,
Okay.
I'll stand for questions.
Well, discussion or questions for, first of all, yeah, go ahead, Senator Blumer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Senator Boner, so getting to the FMRs, I was curious that it was being used. I realize it's a stable revenue stream, but part of the value of the FMRs is the fact that it is a unique federal revenue stream, and so the state typically tries to reserve those funds for bonding purposes so that we can have a highest credit rating possible for a bond issuance, which is why the $8 million for the University of Wyoming, for example, is backstopping the bonding on the university housing. It seems that this is just taking a random source of revenue and using it so that there's a revenue stream. And I was wondering if there was any conversation or what the rhyme or reason was for choosing it, because honestly, it seems to be wasting a source of revenue that has useful implications in other ways when a standard general fund appropriation would seem to be equivalent for the purposes of what's being done here. Is there a reason for it that you know of?
Senator Boner?
Yeah, Madam Chairwoman, once again, I was responding to the concern from the sponsor that FMRs were a good revenue stream. It doesn't take that $8 million from UW, to be clear. So it's,
I understand.
And so the concept was to find something that is going to the general fund currently. It's my understanding that if it's going to the BRA, that's effectively the same as the general fund. And I was unaware of any bonding purposes that it's being used for in the BRA. That would be news to me. So that was as simple as that. Still use FMRs, but divert it from general funds as opposed to a school foundation program. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for the good senator? Okay. Did someone move that? Or did someone want to
Madam
move
Chairman.
that? Yes, go ahead.
What I would suggest is that maybe Senator Olson, Senator Brennan could consult with the various legal counsels and see if it really makes a difference or not. I think Senator Boner's idea is creative, but it may, in the long run, make no difference at all. I don't know. But if that consultation was had, then you could bring an amendment on the floor.
Good point. Okay. Well, we won't move that then at this time, and we'll just take a look. We'll turn you two guys loose with the lawyers and have fun with that. Oh, that's right, you are a lawyer. So, any other amendments on the bill? Okay. Any comments or discussion you'd like to make? Representative Andrew, is there anything that you'd like to say? Okay. Before we vote, I just, comments, I mean, I know a lot of people think, well, you're a public school teacher, a retired one, that you're probably against this bill. I'm very open to school choice, as long as it's done right. I've done a lot of research on a lot of states. I know there's a lot of states that are jumping into this. I think there's about 11 right now that are universal. My biggest hangup is the universal school choice. I would have loved to have seen just the bill that we passed last year to see how that would work and how it would, affect our funding and whether or not it would be litigated. That would have been my first choice. But obviously this bill came and there's people on both sides of the aisle. I get woke up at 2:00 in the morning sometimes with, texts, and I'm like going, oh, please let me sleep. But I'm appreciative of so many of the public that have called, texted, sent emails, caught me in the halls, caught me, downtown at a restaurant. Hey, we need, but my thoughts are that I probably will vote against this bill, at least now in its present form. I think we're getting where we need to be with it. I think maybe there's a couple more things we need to do with it. And maybe I can get on board with it. I kind of like the idea of, I may even bring something that takes a look at a tiered potential with income-based. I'm nervous about universal. I'll just say that right up front. But I'm in support of choice, and I believe that's a parent's right to be able to choose to take their kids wherever they'd like. And so I think this bill has potential to do some good things. But I just wanted to kind of, say up front that I think the committee's made some good efforts at getting this better. I'm sorry, Representative Ocean, but I think we're going to make it a better bill. And the intent is good, though. And just open it up for other comments from the committee before we vote. Yes, go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. So the bill we passed last year that this is based on, I think it had some accommodations that moved it towards constitutional, even if there were still some constitutional concerns, because there was assistance for the poor. It had income requirements, as it does currently in statute. There were also good provisions in that particular piece of legislation related to early childhood education, pre-K. We didn't have anything that was a broad program. We had some smaller programs, and this legislation eliminates the pre-K and then eliminates any of the constitutional provisions that would have been protective, in my view, making it unconstitutional. And, plain reading of Article 7, Section 8 of the Constitution, which says, "Nor shall any portion of any public school fund ever be used to support or assist any private school or any school, academy, seminary, college, or other institution of learning controlled by any church or sectarian organization or religious denomination whatsoever." The plain reading of that is pretty clear. Now, I do understand that we can always do some gymnastics and contortions in such a way that we can work around the Constitution. And so maybe this bill will achieve working around the intent of the founders of the Constitution not to use public funds for private school endeavors. But the plain reading, I think, is consistent with the interest of the state. These are public dollars. Public funds are coming into the state through taxes and through revenues, and those funds are to be used for public education and not to hold back any private education, right? There's no interest in precluding private education or desires outside of that. But the public funds are for public education. When we break down that system and we erode that system, we create challenges, both constitutional challenges as well as for the functioning of the public education system. And that's not anything detrimental towards private education, which has an important role, an important place. To me, this takes a bill that last year had substantial constitutional concerns and really takes it to a place where it seems to me to just be first face unconstitutional in a way that can't be justified. So I'm on and against the bill, and with regret that the one good part of the bill, the pre-K aspect of it, has been eliminated.
Any other comments? Yes, Senator Scott.
Madam Chairman, I thought that the gentleman who testified a few minutes ago that said competition breeds excellence summed up one of the principal arguments for the bill as well as anything I've heard. And I think that is very true. I also am concerned about the resistance in the public education system to getting some reform that would improve the number of the kids that they're teaching to read adequately. And I think we need some option for parents, as long as we've got that kind of problem, to go elsewhere. And I think with the choice elements we are having, we're seeing some movement for parents whose kids are just simply not getting what they need in the current public system. And we need to fix that. But this gives parents an option while that's being fixed, because a large system like we've got is going to take a while to fix. So for both those reasons, I'm for the bill.
Senator Brennan, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I am going to be an aye on this bill, and I just want to make a few comments on that. I've said it many times, and I'll say it again. Every child is created on purpose, with purpose, for purpose. And our job is to make sure that all of our kids are educated to the best of their ability and to the greatest of our talent. And if we don't do that as a society, then we're failing our kids. And that's what this bill is about. It's about choice for all of our kids. And when we talk about incomes, the last time I checked, kids don't make an income, but we're obligated. Not just obligated, it's what we need to do as a society. It's the right thing to do, is to make sure that all of our kids are educated to the best of their ability. And we have heard a little bit too about kind of that bell curve of kids. You got a lot here in the average. And then you've got some who they need a little extra help. And then sometimes, we had somebody who testified to this, you got sometimes kids who are a little bit smarter. And one of my boys' teachers one time said, give me an average student over a super smart student any day. They're easier than the super smart student to educate. And I've got 4 kids and they fall all over that bell curve. And so I can testify, those smart ones can be a challenge, but the ones at the bottom they're a challenge too. And sometimes we just need a little bit different path for those students. And a student shouldn't be precluded from choice because of their parents' income. We need to have choice for all of our kids. And so for that reason, Madam Chairman, I will be an aye on this vote.
Senator Olson, any final comments?
I guess
before
I
we
have
vote?
to comment
Yeah,
now
well,
because
you
I
can.
can't be the
Pressure's on.
sole
Pressure's on.
person not to comment. I'll just say, you know, I'm obviously a co-sponsor on this bill. I think that the amendments that we've made to it make me more comfortable with the bill as I talk to people and hear their concerns and try to address their concerns in this bill. I think there's still some opportunity as this moves through the Senate to receive further amendments to try to address more of those concerns. I very much believe that the best way for this legislation to move forward is for everyone to participate in the process of making it the best bill that it can possibly be. I'm on it for this bill because I believe very strongly in school choice. I have 3 kids. I believe so strongly in school choice that I founded a charter school, a public tuition-free charter school. One of my kids attends that school, one of my kids doesn't. And that's because they learn different and they seek a different type of education. So I think that it's extremely important that parents have as much freedom as possible to send their kids to the school of choice. And so that's why I'm on it for this bill.
Okay, thank you. Well, with that, let's go ahead and take roll. Ashley?
Madam Chairman, on House Bill 199, Wyoming Freedom Scholarship Act, do pass as amended. Senator Brennan?
Aye.
Senator Olson?
Aye.
Senator Rothfuss?
No.
Senator Scott?
Aye.
Chairwoman Schuler?
No.
3 aye, 2 no.
Okay, we appreciate the testimony. I'm really sorry we didn't get to the folks online, but again, appreciate everybody coming and showing up and giving us your thoughts. Thanks so much. This meeting's adjourned.